The Fantastic Four First Steps is a 2025 American film directed by Matt Shakman and stars Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Ebon Moss-Bachrach, I think that's his name. Sorry. Joseph Quinn, Ralph Ineson, and Julia Garner. The plot follows the Fantastic Four facing their biggest challenge yet as the mysterious Silver Surfer comes to Earth with news of impending doom in the form of planet-devouring entity known as Galactus. Now let's take a step back and talk about superhero fatigue. Because I got it pretty early on, I gotta say, and I was never really sure why, to be honest. I mean, I grew up with comic books, and one thing that we wanted back then in the 80s and early 90s and stuff, we wanted awesome comic book movies, and we just didn't get them. We just weren't there yet, I guess. Like the early 2000s started, bringing us stuff like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, and those were really cool. The first two X-Men films I'm a big fan of. Yeah, I enjoyed all of those. But around the time of, I think Iron Man 2, I realized that this was going to be huge. I was really happy about that, as a comic fan. But I was just kind of tapped out mentally, I think. So my superhero fatigue story makes, less sense than most people's, but that's fine. And also, I think it was also around that time I started to get really, really into horror. Really. And that never stopped. But yeah, I think, horror took over, comic book movies and superheroes were out. I mean, sure, I did see some, I've seen all the Deadpool movies. I saw Logan, and a few things I think that I was interested in, but I skipped the entire Avengers story arc, which I do want to see eventually. Arguably, from what I've heard, is those are the cream of the crop. Yeah, I'll catch up one day maybe. So I mean, even though I haven't seen the heavy hitters of the last 15 years or so, I've at least been paying attention. I know what's came out. I know bits and pieces about the films. And what's funny is I was never a big Fantastic Four fan. Even back in the day when I was reading comics constantly, I always thought the Thing was super cool, and I still do. Really like that character. Great design, and he always reminded me of the Hulk, who I've always been a huge fan of. But I didn't follow them really because they were always the good guys with morals and ethics, and I wanted anti-heroes. That said, older me is cool with both, and it's these humanitarian values that I did like about this film. So there's that. But I really did enjoy the trailer for this Fantastic Four film, and as you guys maybe know, I really really liked the James Gunn Superman. So I think I normally would not have gone for either film, but I'm glad that I did because I'm happy to see comic book movies coming back after a little bit of a slump, right? I think that was the general consensus. So yeah, similar to the Superman film, you get a brief explanation as to who the Fantastic Four are, with no time wasted on an origin story that we've already seen before. Didn't need it, didn't miss it. Let's spend the time on current events. And what I liked about the trailer so much was the cool, stylized, kind of 1960s aesthetics, and the film delivers on that premise with some cool, again, 60s-esque sequences that were just fun. I don't really know how else to describe them. You'll know when I see it, and it just didn't feel at all derivative. In fact, I felt like this entire film felt. I don't know if it felt fresh to me. I think I can comfortably say that. The editing was also really great, and I have to give credit to Jess Hall, who's the DP here, because the cinematography is, in my opinion, fantastic. Jess has worked on stuff like Grindhouse and Hot Fuzz, so some cool stuff that I do like, and also the world building, which you might know that I'm kind of big on. It was just really fun. Imagine modern day cities, mixed with 60s era sci-fi. I personally, and from what I've heard, a lot of people did get Jetsons vibes. I was always a big fan of the Jetsons. It was fun to be in that world instead of, ultra sleek, super modern landscapes and cities, that we're used to seeing in these types of movies. So this film takes place 4 years after the incident in where the Fantastic Four, got their superpowers. If you don't know how that happened, you can look into it. And now they've been deemed the protectors of the Earth, focusing on solving problems through diplomatic efforts over violence. Again, something I appreciated now where I didn't as a kid. And Sue Storm and Reed Richards find out that Sue is pregnant, with their child, and which becomes the catalyst, basically, as shortly after a mysterious being arrives on Earth to deliver a message, saying that Earth has been marked for destruction by Galactus. And this messenger is the Silver Surfer, a character I always liked, always been a fan of him. This time played by Julia Garner, which was a bold choice since, the character is, in the comics, is a man, or at least well, he's not human, I guess. Maybe he's not a man. He looks like a man, right? And we know, come on, we know how the nerds react to this kind of thing. But me being basically like a pedestrian fan of the Silver Surfer, I didn't mind this change at all. I really didn't care. I thought it worked well. The character was cool, looks cool. And I just have zero complaints about that change. Just saying. And Galactus is played by the great Ralph Ineson. I've always been a fan of that guy. And I assumed that it was just going to be purely CGI, just with Ralph's voice. But apparently Ralph is actually wearing the suit and, then recorded with like motion capture cameras or whatever, that technology. I assumed he was going to be just pure CGI, but he looks great. I guess it was the same technology used for The Thing, aka Ben Grimm. And this should be a huge thing for comic fans since, he's basically an all-time kind of fan favorite villain for Marvel, and was previously portrayed as a cloud, which nobody liked. I don't know if you guys have seen those. The previous two Fantastic Four movies were pretty terrible, especially the first one. I remember the second one being like a little better, but I don't know, it probably sucks. So instead of waiting around, for Earth to just be destroyed, the Fantastic Four travel to Galactus in hopes of coming to some sort of an agreement, because that's what they do. But the only way that he's willing to agree to spare Earth is if Sue and Reed offer them their baby, who has apparently great cosmic power and will finally satiate Galactus's never-ending hunger. Which is honestly a pretty cool story that sounds like it could have been inspired by like Greek mythology, maybe. Those are vibes I'm getting. And I don't know if this is a storyline just taken right out of the comics or not, but it's a cool dynamic that completely fits the script here and represents the Fantastic Four really well, do you give up your child to save Earth, or do you escape with your family and let the planet die? It's pretty big stakes either way. And that sums up the Fantastic Four for me, as people. And what I liked about this film is the humanity making, decisions that are for the good of the people, even when they're quick to turn on you. So, basically the choice is, give up your only child to save everybody, or leave the planet while dooming everyone on it, or fight Galactus, I guess, risking everyone altogether, including yourselves. I won't spoil anything else important, but the choice they make, takes the entire city working together to overcome a massive threat. So I'm giving the Fantastic Four First Steps a 7 out of 10. I didn't like it quite as much as Superman, but not far off either. And like with Superman, I liked it most when it was being more than just an overstimulating, action spectacle. Both of these are better than that. And I liked literally all of the characters here, especially... I really like Pedro Pascal's, portrayal of Reed Richards. Maybe because I just like him a lot, and maybe because I remember seeing a ton of nerds complaining about his casting for whatever reason. And even after this, film has been out a little while, I'm still seeing people kind of, state that they thought that Pedro was miscast. Again, I guess, you got to remember that I'm viewing this movie through the eyes of, again, just not a huge Marvel fan, not a huge Fantastic Four fan, a comic fan, but still, I didn't really have a dog in this fight so much as maybe some of you guys do. So keep in mind, if you disagree with literally everything I said, it's because we just probably have different backgrounds with these characters and stuff, the source material. But I also thought Vanessa Kirby was great as Sue Storm. She might have. She might give the best performance here. And the other characters are cool too. Like I said, I'm really a big fan of The Thing, And he doesn't have like a ton to do here, but I think he's always kind of been that way, more of a side character, even in the Fantastic Four. But he was portrayed really well. The voice work was great. I think, me being a fan of that character, I feel like he was totally done right. Again, just my pedestrian opinion. And then you have the Human Torch, played by Human Torch, right? Johnny Storm, or I mean Johnny Storm? Yeah, whatever. You know who I mean. Played by Joseph Quinn, who is a really good actor. I'd only really become aware of him when he was in that Quiet Place movie that he was in recently. And I thought he was fantastic in that. So when he's got the right script and right direction and everything, he's very, very good. And he's good here too. Everyone's good, but yeah, check it out. I think it's a really, really, really fun movie. I'd watch it again, and I think even when the next Fantastic Four movie comes out, I think I'm definitely gonna have to see that too. So I don't know, maybe I'm a fan now. I don't know. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this movie, especially if you're a big fan of the Fantastic Four, like the comics and stuff. I would really like to hear from you guys. Did you like this movie? Did you think my take on it was? Did you think it was good or bad? Or yeah, let's talk movies and comics and stuff. Cheers, guys. I'll see you at the multiplex.